Welcome back, everybody. Today we're talking about something that happens every single summer, and somehow it still catches homeowners completely off guard. Your air conditioning system works perfectly fine through the spring, maybe even the beginning of summer, and then the first real heat wave hits, and suddenly the house won't cool down anymore. The thermostat keeps climbing, the vents feel weak, the outdoor unit sounds louder than normal, and now everybody's scrambling, trying to get an HVAC company on the phone at the exact same time. And what's funny is homeowners always say the same thing. It was working yesterday.
Yeah, and technically they're right. The system probably was working yesterday. But what most people don't realize is that an air conditioner can slowly weaken over time without completely failing. Then, when temperatures suddenly jump into the 90s for several days straight, all those little hidden problems finally show themselves. The heat wave becomes the stress test. Maybe the capacitor was already getting weak. Maybe the condenser coil was dirty. Maybe airflow hasn't been great for months. Under normal weather conditions, the system survives. But once extreme heat shows up and the unit has to run almost nonstop, everything gets exposed very quickly.
And I think that surprises homeowners because people assume an AC either works or it doesn't work. They don't really think about performance gradually declining over time. But HVAC systems are a lot like cars. You can ignore little warning signs for a long time until one really hot day finally pushes everything over the edge. Maybe certain rooms have been warmer lately. Maybe the system has been running longer than normal. Maybe your electric bill suddenly jumped compared to last summer. Those are usually signs the system has already been struggling before the heat wave ever arrived.
Exactly. And another thing homeowners misunderstand is that sometimes the system isn't actually broken during a heat wave. Sometimes it's simply overwhelmed. Most residential AC systems are designed around average summer temperatures for the region, not record-breaking conditions. So if it's 100 degrees outside and your AC is maintaining 75 indoors, that system may actually be performing pretty well. But people get nervous because the unit never shuts off. They'll say, "My air conditioner has been running for 6 straight hours." Well, during extreme heat, continuous operation can actually be normal. The system is trying to keep up with a massive heat load all day long.
That's such an important point because homeowners immediately think nonstop operation means failure. Now, obviously, if the house keeps climbing to 80 or 82 degrees, that's a different conversation. But there's a big difference between a system that's struggling slightly and a system that's completely broken. And heat waves create brutal conditions for these machines. Your AC is basically removing heat from inside the house and trying to dump that heat outdoors. The hotter it gets outside, the harder that process becomes. So the entire system starts working under higher stress. Refrigerant pressures increase, electrical components get hotter, compressor temperatures rise, and the unit may stay under load almost all day.
And then humidity gets added into the equation too. That's the part a lot of homeowners forget about. Your air conditioner isn't just lowering temperature, it's also removing moisture from the air. During a heat wave with high humidity, the system has to work even harder because now it's trying to cool the home and pull moisture out at the same time. That's why houses can start feeling sticky and uncomfortable even if the thermostat number itself doesn't look terrible. You'll hear homeowners say, "The thermostat says 75, but the house feels miserable." Well, humidity plays a huge role in comfort. If the system can't remove moisture effectively anymore, the whole house starts feeling warmer than it actually is.
And honestly, this is when people start making panic decisions. They crank the thermostat down to 65, hoping the house cools faster. They start closing vents in random rooms. Some people even shut registers upstairs, trying to force more air downstairs. Meanwhile, the system is already under maximum stress, and now airflow is getting disrupted too. And during these heat waves, HVAC companies are absolutely slammed because every struggling system in town starts reaching its breaking point at the same time.
Every technician knows that first major heat wave of the year is chaos. Phones start ringing nonstop because weak components finally fail under the extra load. Capacitors go bad, fan motors overheat, compressors shut down, breakers trip, and usually it all happens within the same few days. What's crazy is homeowners often ignore the warning signs leading up to it. Maybe the outdoor unit has been louder lately. Maybe airflow has been weaker for weeks. Maybe the system already wasn't cooling quite like it used to. But because cold air was still coming out of the vents, they assumed everything was fine. Then the hottest day of the year arrives and the system finally says, "I'm done."
And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going to talk about the parts that fail most often during heat waves, why airflow and maintenance matter so much, what homeowners should watch for before total failure happens, and also some simple things people can do to help their systems survive extreme summer temperatures. Because honestly, Todd, sometimes preventing a breakdown comes down to very small things homeowners completely overlook.
All right, so let's talk about the actual parts inside an air conditioning system that usually fail during a heat wave, because there are definitely a few repeat offenders every summer. And honestly, the number one thing HVAC technicians replace during extreme heat is probably the capacitor. Most homeowners have never even heard of a capacitor until theirs fails, but it's a small electrical component that helps start and run the motors inside the system, mainly the compressor and the outdoor fan motor. The problem is, capacitors absolutely hate heat. Over time, they slowly weaken, especially after years of high temperatures and constant cycling. Then the first major heat wave arrives, the system starts running nonstop, and suddenly that weakened capacitor can't handle the load anymore. That's when homeowners hear clicking, buzzing, or notice the outdoor unit trying to start but never fully turning on.
And what's funny is, a lot of people think the entire air conditioner just exploded, when really it can be a relatively small part causing the problem. But the symptoms are dramatic. The house suddenly gets warmer, airflow feels weak, maybe the outdoor fan isn't spinning, and now panic sets in because it's 98 degrees outside. And the dangerous part is people sometimes keep trying to force the system to run. They'll keep lowering the thermostat or flipping breakers on and off, hoping it magically fixes itself. Meanwhile, the compressor is sitting there trying repeatedly to start under extreme pressure conditions, which can actually create bigger problems if the issue isn't addressed quickly.
Exactly. And that leads right into the next component that struggles during heat waves, the condenser fan motor. That outdoor fan is incredibly important because its entire job is removing heat from the condenser coil. If the fan slows down, overheats, or completely stops, the system can't reject heat properly anymore. Now pressures inside the system start climbing fast, and once pressures rise high enough, the compressor temperature shoots up too. That's why one failed fan motor can suddenly turn into a much more serious repair if the system keeps running too long. Sometimes homeowners notice the outdoor unit sounds different before total failure happens. Maybe the fan sounds slower than normal or starts making a grinding noise. Those are huge warning signs during hot weather.
And compressors themselves take an unbelievable beating during heat waves. That's really the heart of the entire air conditioning system. The compressor is responsible for circulating refrigerant and keeping the cooling cycle moving. But during extreme temperatures, it may run almost continuously for days at a time. Now, if the system is clean, properly charged, and getting good airflow, it may survive that stress without much trouble. But if the system already has problems, dirty coils, low refrigerant, weak capacitors, airflow restrictions, now that compressor is operating under constant strain. And compressors are expensive. That's the repair homeowners really hope to avoid, because once a compressor fails, people start having conversations about major repairs or even full system replacement.
And sometimes compressors don't fail all at once either. They overheat first. That's something homeowners find really confusing. They'll say, well, the AC stopped working this afternoon, but then later that night it started cooling again. What probably happened is the compressor went into thermal overload protection. Basically, it got too hot, shut itself down temporarily, then restarted once outdoor temperatures dropped and the unit cooled off a little. And honestly, that's a giant warning sign, because repeated overheating shortens compressor lifespan dramatically. The system may still technically run for a while afterward, but internally that compressor is getting damaged every time it overheats.
And heat waves expose dirty systems incredibly fast too. A filthy condenser coil might not seem like a huge problem during mild weather. The system still cools, maybe just a little less efficiently. But during extreme heat, that dirt becomes a major issue because the system already struggles to release heat outdoors. Now you've basically wrapped the condenser in a blanket. So refrigerant pressures rise higher, runtime increases, electrical load increases, and everything inside the system gets hotter than it should. And honestly, Todd, this is where maintenance starts separating the systems that survive heat waves from the ones that don't.
Absolutely. People sometimes think maintenance is just HVAC companies trying to sell tune-ups, but extreme weather really proves why it matters. A clean system with proper airflow and healthy electrical components can survive conditions that completely destroy a neglected system. Even something as simple as changing the air filter matters way more than people realize. A clogged filter restricts airflow across the indoor evaporator coil, which reduces cooling efficiency and increases strain on the entire system. During mild weather, the homeowner might barely notice. During a heat wave, that restriction suddenly becomes a major performance issue.
And homeowners usually don't connect those small maintenance issues to system failure. They think breakdowns happen randomly, but most of the time, there's a chain reaction happening behind the scenes. Reduced airflow causes longer run times. Longer run times create more heat. More heat stresses electrical components. Weak components start failing. Then suddenly, the house won't cool anymore. And because it all happens during the hottest week of the year, it feels like the system failed overnight.
Exactly. The heat wave usually isn't the original problem. It's just the moment the existing problems finally become impossible for the system to hide anymore. And honestly, once temperatures get extreme enough, even small weaknesses inside the system can snowball very quickly. That's why HVAC technicians get so busy during these stretches of weather. Every struggling air conditioner in town reaches its limit at almost the exact same time.
And next, we should probably talk about some of the homeowner mistakes that actually make these situations worse, because people start doing some wild things once the house gets hot. All right, so let's finish with the practical side of this, because when people realize their AC is struggling during a heat wave, the first reaction is usually panic. And honestly, some of the things homeowners do in that moment actually make the situation worse. The biggest one is cranking the thermostat way down, thinking the system will cool faster. People will drop it from 74 to 65, hoping the house catches up quicker. But most residential air conditioners don't work like that. The system is either running or it isn't. Setting the thermostat dramatically lower doesn't suddenly increase cooling power. It just guarantees the unit runs nonstop under maximum load. And during extreme heat, that extra strain matters.
Exactly. Another thing people do is start closing vents around the house, trying to force air into certain rooms. That sounds logical at first, but modern HVAC systems are designed for a specific amount of airflow. When you start shutting registers, you can actually create pressure problems inside the duct system. Now airflow across the evaporator coil changes, the blower motor works harder, and in some cases, you can even increase the risk of the coil freezing or the system overheating. So usually the best thing homeowners can do is actually keep airflow as normal and unrestricted as possible. And honestly, one of the smartest things people can do during a heat wave is reduce the heat load inside the home itself.
That's a huge point because during these weather events, the AC is fighting heat from everywhere. Sunlight through windows, attic heat, cooking appliances, dryers, showers, electronics, it all adds up. So if you're cooking a giant dinner at 5 o'clock in the afternoon while the outdoor temperature is 98 degrees, you're making the air conditioner's job dramatically harder. Simple things help more than people think. Closing blinds during peak sunlight hours, avoiding oven use in the hottest part of the day, running bathroom exhaust fans after showers, even delaying laundry until evening. All of that reduces indoor heat buildup. And the less heat entering the home, the less stress you're putting on the AC system.
And honestly, airflow outside matters too. A lot of outdoor condenser units get surrounded by overgrown bushes, weeds, fencing, patio furniture. Sometimes homeowners accidentally block the exact thing the system needs most, which is airflow. That outdoor unit has to breathe. If hot air gets trapped around the condenser during a heat wave, efficiency drops even more. That's why keeping the area around the unit clear is important, especially during extreme temperatures. And this is also the time of year when dirty air filters become a massive issue. It's amazing how many service calls during heat waves come down to a completely clogged filter restricting airflow.
And people always underestimate filters because they look simple, but restricted airflow changes everything inside the system. The evaporator coil can't absorb heat properly, cooling efficiency drops, runtime increases, and now every component inside the unit stays under stress longer, which is why one inexpensive, neglected filter can contribute to much larger problems over time. And honestly, heat waves are usually when homeowners finally realize how important maintenance actually is. The systems that survive these stretches the best are almost always the systems that were maintained before the weather became extreme.
Exactly, because once the heat wave arrives, you're really in survival mode at that point. And another thing homeowners should understand is that HVAC companies get absolutely buried during these stretches of weather. Everybody's calling at once because every struggling system in town reaches its limit together. So waiting until the first 95-degree day to test your air conditioner is probably not the best strategy. If the system sounds different, if airflow feels weaker, if cooling seems inconsistent, it's much smarter to deal with those issues early before extreme weather shows up. Because once the heat wave hits, repair wait times get longer, parts become harder to get, and everybody's suddenly competing for appointments.
And honestly, some homeowners also need to reset expectations a little bit during record-breaking heat. A residential air conditioner is not designed to turn your house into a refrigerator when it's 100 degrees outside. If the system is maintaining a comfortable indoor temperature and controlling humidity reasonably well, it may already be doing exactly what it was designed to do. Now, obviously, if the house keeps climbing into the 80s, that's different. But nonstop operation during extreme heat doesn't automatically mean the system is failing. Sometimes it simply means the system is fighting an enormous heat load all day long.
And really, that's probably the biggest takeaway from this whole conversation. Heat waves expose weaknesses: weak airflow, dirty coils, neglected maintenance, aging electrical components, low refrigerant. The extreme temperatures bring all those problems to the surface very quickly. But homeowners can absolutely improve their chances by paying attention to warning signs early and reducing unnecessary strain on the system before the hottest part of summer arrives. Because once your AC quits during a major heat wave, suddenly everybody in town is trying to make the exact same service call you are.
Exactly. So hopefully this episode helps people understand what's actually happening inside these systems during extreme summer weather, and maybe helps a few homeowners avoid getting stuck without air conditioning on the hottest day of the year. And honestly, Todd, if your air conditioner is making weird noises right now after listening to this episode, maybe don't ignore that.
Yeah, that's probably your sign.
Thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.